She won the game. "Well, what do you know?" she said. She looked over at Jimmy and then, shocked, saw that he was blinking back tears. "Why, what's this?" she asked. "It's just a game, and you beat me every other time." She handed him a handkerchief she kept in her pocket. He rubbed fiercely at his eyes. "I always win," he said. "I've never ever lost." Ava leaned forward on her elbows. "You can't win all the time," she said. "I wish you could." She thought of Brian, saw him moving on a checkerboard toward her. "King me," he'd say. "Don't tell anyone I cried." "Who cried? Did someone cry here?" She got up, smoothing her dress. "I have to get to work," she told him, "and you have to scoot." They put the pieces back in the box, and then he waited at the table for her to get ready. He was in his red jersey and green plaid shorts, his keds scribbled over with magic marker. He watched as she rustled around the living room, looking for her purse and the little veiled hat she sometimes wore because she thought it made her look more professional. Sweat beaded along her back. She'd wasted her whole morning and some of her afternoon running to a lawyer to talk about Brian's custody threat. It was 5 years since Brian had left them, barely sending money, barely calling, and even though the divorce had been his idea, all of a sudden he was telling her that she now posed a psychological and physical danger to their son. She had had to scramble to find a lawyer she could afford, a man whose name was actually, ridiculously, John Smith. He worked out of a tiny, overheated office without even a secretary, and he seemed so indifferent she wanted to shake him. "This is just nonsense, isn't it?" she said to the lawyer. "The law is never nonsense," John Smith said. She told the lawyer how Brian used to have a drinking problem, one that started after he left her, and that he had called her drunk a few times. She talked about how he'd abandoned his son and her after things at his job went bad. He hadn't even seen Lewis in nearly 5 years, so how could he possibly think about wanting custody now? She spilled all the details of her life, and the whole time, John Smith didn't say a thing. He just leaned back in his chair, making a tent of his fingers, waiting until she was finished, and then he shrugged. "Circumstances change," he said, "and so do people. You said he has a full-time job, but you only work part-time, which puts him in a more stable financial situation than you. It could look like a better environment for a kid." "You're joking. My environment is just fine." "Is it?" He rolled his pen between his fingers. "You said he thinks you have a lot of men coming over. Can you prove you don't? Can you show that your bills are paid right on time?" Ava thought of all the bills she kept in a shoebox, the careful way she went through them every month. She had a whole separate bank account of money she was saving so she could buy her house instead of rent it, and she made sure to put something in it every week, even if it was only $10. "I have savings. I have a house." "Correction, you rent the house. You don't own it, and banks don't like giving mortgages to women." "But I will own it," Ava said stiffly. She thought of how hard it had been to convince the realtor to rent her the house, how he kept asking her if there was a man who could co-sign the lease. She might have to fight to get a bank to give her a mortgage, but fight she would. "But you don't own it now. And if you can't prove your finances are sound, we may have a problem. How's your son doing? Does he have friends? Is he doing all right in school?" He shuffled papers on his desk, waiting for her response, but she knew suddenly that he wasn't going to be able to help her, and she knew she was still going to have to pay him for his time. "You want to think about all this, Mrs. Lark," he said. She came home feeling sick, her head splitting like a seam. Jimmy had distracted her, but now she had to get to work, and worry hung on her like a too-heavy winter coat. "Ava," Jimmy said, and she snapped back toward him. She felt his eyes on her, trailing her as she grabbed up her purse. "Call me Mrs. Lark, Jimmy." "Mrs. Lark," he said, even though they both knew there wasn't a husband around, that she was no more a Mrs. than he was. She waved her hand. "I have to get to work," she repeated. She knew what she had to do. She had to make that company think she was good enough to hire her full-time at regular hours, with benefits, instead of just 3 days a week or whenever they needed her. She had to pay